Hello everybody, welcome back to Life Stories. My name is Trent, and I hope you guys are doing awesome as always. Today, we got some stories coming at you from Reddit/idontworkherelady. So, you know how this goes, let's get this started. Our first story is titled, Family Assumes I'm an Employee After I Stop Kids from Tapping on the Glass. I made a Reddit account solely to tell this story, but I've been lurking for not even a month. So, let's go. Apologies if I've done something wrong or missed anything. This is my first post of any kind, and I'm still learning the ropes. First of all, them assuming I worked there was pretty much entirely my fault. I was 16 at the time this takes place, visiting a very nice taxidermy museum with my family. I went ahead to view the entomology exhibit, as I've always enjoyed creepy crawly things of all kinds. This particular exhibit was very well put together, with a handful of live critters on display besides all the dead ones. Tarantulas, hissing cockroaches, the usual suspects. I was in there by myself at first, but it wasn't long before another family came in. There were two women, one of whom was the mother, and the other I'm pretty sure was an aunt. They had a baby in a stroller, and two boys with them. I'm bad at estimating ages, but the boys were maybe around 7 or 8. At first, all was well, and I minded my own business. Then, the boys started tapping on the glass, containers that were clearly labeled live, animal, and do not touch. Now, maybe they couldn't read very well, I don't pretend to know, but neither adult did anything to stop them. So after a moment of tap tap tap, it won't move, I went over and very gently explained what the sign said, and that tapping bothered the animals. They stopped, and I went back to admiring the shiny beetles. The next thing I know, the boys are coming over to where I'm looking and asking, "Are these ones alive?" I explain that no, they're not, and they accept that. Until the next case, where they ask the same question. This happens several times, and I explain that the bugs with pins sticking through them are dead, and have been dead for a rather long time. After a little while, they get bored with this and go back to their adults, who are looking at the butterflies. Now, I'm not an eavesdropper, but this was a very small room, and we were the only ones in there, so it was quiet. I heard the mom wondering if they were moths or butterflies, to which I told her they were butterflies and explained the difference. One of the boys asked if butterflies were venomous, which neither mom nor auntie knew the answer to. So once again, I stepped in to explain that no, they aren't, but some are poisonous. On their way out of the exhibit, the adults both thanked me for my help, clearly under the impression that I was an employee. I didn't correct them and said it was no problem. I'm glad to help. It's nowhere near the first or last time I've been mistaken for an employee. We frequent zoos and museums quite often, and since I'm fairly knowledgeable on animal life, I frequently step in to answer questions for people. Not quite sure how to end this, so TLDR, I explained to some kids why they shouldn't tap on the glass and bother the bugs in an exhibit, and the family then assumed I worked there, so I didn't correct them and answered their questions. No Karens, no angry parents, just an overall pleasant experience where I got to share some of my knowledge with a nice family. Hey man, starting off an episode with a angry Karen-free story? I'm okay with that. Moving along, our next story is a short one, and it's titled, He Can't Help You, He's a Hologram. Now, this is not my story, I'm only telling you guys what I saw a while back before the COVID-19 lockdown happened. I was at the Science Museum. Now, they were starting to use holographic technology, and these holograms were so lifelike. Now, problem is that it's easy to mistake them for real people, since they're dressed like the staff. The holograms only function to explain an exhibit if you push a button. Now, I see this woman approach one of the holograms. She has her child, maybe 4 or 5 years old, crying. She's annoyed and wants to look for the bathroom, and is demanding where she can find it. She thought she was talking to an employee. It was the hologram. When they ignore her, she started yelling and then tried to grab their arm while yelling for a manager. She passed right through them and falls down. Now, this isn't even the funniest thing to happen. It was when she freaks out and yells, "Ghost!" and "The museum's haunted!" She grabs her kids and runs out. Geez, lady, don't you know a hologram when you see one? Fair enough, OP, but are you sure it was a hologram? I guess we'll never know. Moving along, our next story is titled, Even in the Cattle Country, You Can't Escape Karens. This is a bit of a different story to most of the ones on this subreddit, but I think it's still a good fit here. English is my first language, but I'm not on mobile, so any typos are deserving of an internet dragging of biblical proportions. TLDR at the end. I work as a ranch hand on my girlfriend's family ranch, out in the middle of cow country, USA. The closest town has a population of less than 300, just for scale. It's one of the larger ones in the immediate area, over several thousand acres and hundreds of cows. Most graze in the pasture, but there are always some that are fed hay in the barnyard. Unfortunately, we had run out of our stockpile, so we called around to find who had hay to spare, and I was quickly dispatched to fetch. The only place that had hay available was a family-run feed store/ranch, about halfway between us and what's the closest city. Even cattle country is not immune to the sprawl, as farms are slowly turned into estates for bored Karens to move into with their high-priced lawyer husbands. This story involves just such a Karen. Our cast: me, aka a ranch hand dressed in a stereotypically excessive amount of denim with a car hat, ball cap, and work boots. And Karen, your middle-aged white woman dressed to the gills in her English riding outfit, complete with riding crop and helmet. The type of woman to make her husband move to the country so she can ride her horse easier, but then get angry that the farm next door is too loud, what with all the farming and such. FYI, don't make a fool of yourself in such an extremely small town. No one has anything better to do than gossip, especially during COVID. Now that our backdrop is all set, I'll get to the point. I had arrived at the feed store to pick up the hay. The store had already started to stack my order, 120 bales, outside for me, as this was going to take 3 trips to complete. I paid for my whole order, and the first and second trips went without issue. I was thinking it was going to be an easy day of stacking hay and driving, and that I'd be done early. If only I knew what awaited me on my 3rd trip. I pulled my beat-up Sierra back into the feed store for the 3rd time that day. The sun hung low in the sky and beat down on my neck as I begun to load my final bales. I'm sweating away the final hours of the day when a white Escalade EXT pulls down the dirt driveway. For those that don't know, it's Cadillac's attempt to turn an SUV into a pickup without changing any of the SUV parts. As anyone that's driven a proper utility or work truck will tell you, it's useless for anything but looking fancy and bragging that you have a pickup at the country club. At first, I pay it no mind and keep loading my bales. It pulls up near my truck. After a pregnant pause, which I could only assume was to straighten her hair and touch up her makeup, Karen emerges from her useless mobile and proceeds to stare at me silently. I give her a nod howdy and keep loading my bales. After each bale, she stamps her fine leather boots in the dirt, louder and louder. After 5 bales, Karen had enough. "Well, aren't you going to help me? I'd like to buy some hay." She basically yells at me. "No, but I'm sure someone inside can." "Load 10 of these in my Nada pickup while I go inside to pay," she said as she pointed at my yet-to-be loaded pile. I tell her no, as they are my bales, and I don't work at the feed store. "Yes, you do. You're the hand that loads them. Just do your job and stop being lazy." She turns and stomps inside, muttering about rude employees. How I was being lazy by loading my own bales, I'll never know. She reemerges as I'm loading the final bales from my pile onto the top of my truck. Seeing the pile gone and none of her pickup, she flies into a rage. "Why didn't you load mine? All you stupid rednecks are the same and don't know how to listen." I'm a redhead and burn quite easily, so at this point in the day, I did actually have sunburn on my neck. She rushes up to me as I begin to tell her that I do not, in fact, work at the feed store. I throw the final bale on top of the stack on my truck. Loading complete, I brush past her and climb into my truck. She screams, "I won't let you leave till I get my hay!" She runs to her still empty 2-window pickup and drives it to the mouth of the driveway and parks across it, blocking the entire entrance. She smugly looks at me from the driver's seat and yells, "Now give me my hay!" Now the driveway was flanked on either side by muddy ruts filled with rain from the night before. To a Karen, it would seem impassable. But to a rancher, it's something you drive across multiple times on most days. As Karen sat smugly in the driver's seat thinking she'd bested me, I simply reached down and threw my truck into 4 high, gunned the motor, and drove through the mud to get around her down the rest of the driveway and onto the main road. The best part was my front tire splashed the mud high enough to cover Karen herself, as she had left her window open and managed to get herself stuck as she tried to follow me down the drive. Yes, I love it. Little bit of mud-based karma? That's a new one. Anyway, with that story out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time for today's episode. I want to thank all of you so much for tuning in. You know how this goes. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Reddit content coming your way. My name is Trent, and I hope to see you guys soon.